Welcome to this Poets at War special report on artificial intelligence with Jason Farley of lore.tv. Now to the trenches.
I don't remember doing much targeting of Angel. We poked fun at the Chosen's failure of nerve when they did the Chosen Sucks campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be the only time we even mentioned the Chosen, because we're all kind of in this wait and see mode.
Yeah.
Like, so far it's been pretty good. Are they going to keep it up? And you don't want to be caught with your pants down.
Also, Wingfeather Saga. Good gracious, they've been hitting it out of the park with that.
Have they? I haven't gotten to see that. I loved the books, but I knew that they were working on the animation, but
they did the whole first season. Yeah, the whole first season's out, man.
The whole first season is out, and it's really good. They changed a couple of things that I personally think are a bit weird as far as names go in the first section that they did. But other than that, it was pretty good.
It's changes for TV, for making it more episodic, less chaptery.
Yeah,
that's really what it is. So
but I'm exactly the kind of person that they're looking for, and the fact that their marketing hasn't ever reached me,
I agree with that,
is amazing.
Yeah,
because they're
shooting more Russell Moore than you.
Are they?
Yes. They're shooting more toward the milk toast evangelical crowd, which I think is completely wrong, considering the fact that all of the Lord of the Rings readers are the backbone of this thing, and they're all the conservatives.
I do think that they complain a lot more, in my limited but now real experience.
What's that? The Lord of the Rings people?
Well, just like the conservative Lord of the Rings Christians are incredibly opinionated.
Right.
Oh yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
but so with something like the Daily Wire, I remember we had some stuff about them having their first 3 movies with female action stars.
Mm-hmm.
The Gina Carano.
The Gina Carano one, and which I never
Run, Hide, Fight, and Shut In.
Yeah, and it's setting up it's brand awareness, setting your brand up and things like that. I would love for the Daily Wire to do better, and I'm hopeful that their new Bent Key stuff, that they do a good job. I know the guy that is overseeing it, and he's really good dude. And I'm just in kind of wait and see mode on that. They chose to make Snow White. I hope they do a good job. We'll see.
They are saying that they're trying to stick to the original source material.
Yeah,
which can be good.
Going back.
Well, it can be good. That's the thing. If you understand what it means, then you'll do good. If you're woodenly following that story, it's not only going to come off as flat, it's going to come off as pagan.
Well, I think what's going to be interesting is this. They did Jeremy's Razors,
right?
Then Jeremy's Chocolate,
right?
Now Snow White.
Right.
It seems like
that's what I've been saying.
They live in response.
Yeah.
They live in reaction. I'd love for them to break out of that. We need folks like that to be successful. But at this point, I'm wary if they're going to be able to break out of it. But
so everything, I'm just clearing something up for record purposes. Can I strike the record after you finish talking about Chris Savino, and I can have you talk to you at some point? Everything about Daily Wire and everything we just kind of went through is cool, or do you want to strike that here and go from here, or somewhere in between? You're open.
I'm open. I don't care.
Okay.
I think whatever. It might be that section might bore people because I don't have
Our tens and
there's
tens
no,
of listeners
there's,
have come to expect it.
there's no axe, if there's no axe to grind, you don't get much heat. That's the
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no,
Yeah.
I prefer little axe to grind, but that's me. Like I have an axe to grind against those who have an axe to grind against Jesus, and that's about it. You know?
Yep.
So
yeah. Yeah, it reminds me to tell you about axes to grind once we get if whenever we start.
well, like we're mostly started. Let me just say, like I
okay.
wanted to talk AI with you, and that's why I wanted to bring you on. And then Knox Unleashed on today on AI, and I feel like I'm gonna burn you out. But maybe we can get a little deeper than some of the stuff Knox was talking about, particularly in the area of artistry and generative AI, because we have three slightly different views here, but we're mostly at least like we're not dead against any of it in any way, shape, or form. I'll let them speak for themselves when time comes, but I'm Mr. All for it. I've been creating generative kind of Ken Burns style slideshows, storytelling with my poetry, and have made a few of those. And it's just I'm trying to plot it, just over a long period of time, and it comes and goes and blah blah blah. But it's been really fun and a good experiment in some basic animation stuff, and I can do more, but I'm trying not to go too far down that hole and make more quantity at the moment. Because I have so much poetry that needs like serial epic poetry. You know me, I write stories in poetry.
Right.
And so I have so much that I want to make it all, but that's a tall order. And so that's been fun. And I've had a lot of pushback from friend groups, people who are listening to the podcast, folks who've done art for me and continue to do art for me, in various places. Oh, you're taking the jobs away from the artists kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, I never was paying you to begin with. We're still bartering, and then, like, I never said, let's stop. Right. So like that there's that. But then it's something that I've started to just kind of let slide off. But what are your thoughts of specifically visual artists getting their jobs taken away by visual AI?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I'm seeing is that if your art can be accomplished by AI, you probably need to work harder, right, at your craft. I mean, I don't think it's as quite as simple as that if there isn't AI, then that AI can do all the things that an artist can do. I just haven't seen that to be the case. When something is AI, you can tell. And there are times when it's okay, when you're settling, but you're always settling for AI. It's not it's never like, oh, that is artistically pushing the boundaries and connecting me to my humanity and that sort of thing. I don't think it's I haven't had that sort of experience with AI, is that it doesn't have the human that human feel that I think is important. Now, I've used it for some things. We've made satirical movie posters. There's a funny one, about Kirk Cameron versus Cocaine Bear.
Yeah.
Some like, so April Fools, we put out a bunch of like, here's the upcoming stuff from lore, Kirk Cameron versus Cocaine Bear, and things like that. I think it's a lot of fun, right? So there's fun to be had, but you don't look at it and say like, wow, that was an incredible movie poster, right? The medium, the art fits the medium. But we also have done it for when I'm pitching something. I actually use AI to put together my pitch decks, but they're not. Those aren't things that ever go out publicly. Those are things that you're trying to help people get the feel of something. And so I think there are uses for it artistically, but they're uses, and art the value of art is not in its use.
Yes.
And AI is useful, not art. So like we did here's the axe to grind. We've got a movie that we're working on called The Lesbian and the Lumberjack.
Yes, I'm excited for that one.
Yeah. So it's about a woman who thinks she's a lesbian, but it turns out she's just never met a real man. Right. So it's a satirical rom-com.
Good idea.
Yeah. So we used AI to put together a fake movie poster, but you can tell, from half from a middle distance, you can tell that's AI. But it gets the lesbian and the lumberjack up there, and she's got an axe to grind. He's got an axe. Is the
Brendan's reaction.
Right. So
I love it.
So
That's too good.
So you've got that, but it's just a way of kind of putting it together. Like, hey, look, we can do this. Is something we could do. We wouldn't use AI for a real movie poster,
Right?
Because it needs to be specific, and AI can't quite. It's not. I don't know if AI is ever going to be able to do. I mean, maybe it'll be able to do some of those things, but we'll get a real movie poster designer. And movie poster art in particular, I think is already kind of a dying thing because it's expensive, and it's from the era when you would say like, oh, we're making a $20 million movie, so we've got $20 million for advertising, and so we'll spend $5,000 on a movie poster. We're just not. That's not the economy that we're working in at Lore. But we want to be at some point, and those movie posters are that valuable.
Yeah, Brendan.
Well, it's also that the entire landscape of how movies are consumed has changed. Movie posters were most often at movie theaters. They were like upcoming things that you could see. Maybe they'd be elsewhere, but now the majority of people get their stuff online.
Right?
Where are you going to see a movie poster?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, maybe I guess scrolling through a feed if they put it as an advertisement thing, but half the time if you're going to put a poster, you might as well put a trailer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when the Black Keys dropped Brother, which I think is one of their best albums, but their movie poster was the front of their of what would have been a DVD cover or a CD cover. The front of it, you look at it like, well, that's not very good, and then you realize, oh, it's because it's not going in a CD. They said, hey, streaming's the next thing. This is going on iTunes, which is what it was called at the time. Now it's Apple Music. And it was just a square that was very distinctively Black Keys. And that was the whole point of it. So they realized, well, the medium doesn't require the cover for a CD anymore because nobody's buying a CD.
Right.
So and the hip hop artists were the ones that figured that out sooner than everyone else. But then as everybody else caught up, I think the same thing's going on with streaming. You don't really need a full movie poster. But there's also some of that is just laziness. Like the thing that drives me the most nuts, right? I watch a lot of pilot episodes for TV shows. The thing that drives me nuts is when you start with a close up of whoever the famous actor or actresses is, like a close up on their face. That's just lazy.
Yeah.
But okay, I'm not going to be able to connect him to the story, but I'll connect him to this familiar face.
Right. Exactly.
So they're like, oh, familiar face, close up of Julia Roberts. I'm going to watch this. Yeah. If that's the first shot, I don't keep watching. Because I know that it's going to be bad because they don't have the things you actually need to connect to the story, and so they have chosen instead to try to connect you to a familiar face, and that's just lazy storytelling.
Alex, did you have some stuff?
So do you think that was a problem with the era that we're like moving out of now with movie stars? Do you think that goes back to where you would go see the newest Tom Cruise movie because Tom Cruise was in it? He's like the last movie star, but you used to do that with Will Smith or Julia Roberts, you mentioned, or George Clooney. You would go see the George Clooney movie because it had him in it. Is this Was this a problem then as well?
I think that was what the movie poster did, right?
Mm-hmm.
So but now they know that you've got 30 seconds or a minute and a half to connect people, and so you've got great openings to TV shows like The Patriot. The TV show, not the movie, but The Patriot it's like the greatest opening scene in a pilot. Maybe Mr. Robot is up there as well with a great opening scene for a pilot. But you've got these that they connect you to the world and the story really well with an opening scene. Instead of saying, well, what would our movie poster look like? Let's start with that shot. And so, but I think we are moving a little bit out of the realm of the movie star. I don't think it's going to go away completely. I think we're layering other influencers on top of it. I think they're called stars because our cosmology is so inverted that we're looking for something to order our life by, and so we pick celebrities and we call them, they're the stars that guide us. But I think we're moving out of that world, but it's not going to go away. But the fact that now the content in the year 1999, there were more professional basketball players than professional screenwriters, professional TV writers. It's just, but now there's, I don't know, probably 10 times as much. I have to do the math, but there's probably 10 times as much content that put out. There's not that many great stars. There's not that many great actors, right? As you can tell from, as things come out, there's just not as many great actors. There's always been a limited number of that. And I don't think it's like a back in my day type of situation. I think it's just the ability to create content has widened. And so instead of having, this is where movie stars come from, this is where sports stars come from. And, I think now you've got there's a whole new democratization of the celebrity industry that I think is going to be better in the long run.
Well, it's a democratization.
You think it's going to be better?
What'd you say, Brendan?
It's a democratization of entertainment overall.
Yeah,
YouTube,
I think so.
YouTube is like, I was watching a guy. I say watching. I was listening to a guy, and he said,
"That's the other thing that's changed."
Go to YouTube. Like you can start watching a YouTube channel because you like the specific content that they're doing at the time. You keep watching the YouTube channel because you like the person doing it.
Yep.
So if a guy gets his fame by playing a specific game, you might keep watching him even if he moves away from that game that you're interested in because you like his personality.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not like a star thing, because the whole point of a movie star, they might be a great actor like Anthony Hopkins or Sean Connery, or they might be great actors, but you're not getting to know them for their personality. Because they're in a movie, they're inherently not playing their personality.
Yeah.
Right.
You're getting to know them for their craft, their skill.
Yeah. And I think that the last point that I want to make before we jump back to Alex, I think that there is not only a democratization because of the landscape in terms of, now anybody can get access to the tools to make stuff, but also there's sort of this desire of a bunch of people, like everybody and their mother can make a movie, so everybody and their mother wants to make a movie, and not everybody and their mother should make a movie. So
Right.
the it's not just a flood of people with bad worldview, it's a flood of people with bad worldview and no skill.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Alex, you were saying you think that's going to be better, right? Jason, like, did you have more that you wanted to add to that to set up the question, Alex?
Yeah, just a little bit. So
Hold it for one moment, Alex. We need to take a break to talk about our friends and sponsors. Attention all Christian writers and creative peoples. Are you searching for a place to share your work and receive encouragement from fellow wordsmiths? Look no further than the Broodcast. Inspired by the legendary Inklings of old, a group of writers who banded together during the Second Great War. The Broadcast is your monthly gathering for inspiration, fellowship, and critique. Join us as we share our stories and support our fellow soldiers on our creative missions. Enlist in the Broadcast community today at joshuadavidling.com/brood. Travel cyberspace. Serve the greatest cause. Join the ranks of the Brood today.
Imagine if you had everything Tolkien ever wrote. Well, you can't have his, but you can have mine. The Ling Lyricanium is $10 a month, and you can find it at joshuadavidling.com/LL. That's joshuadavidling.com/LL.
I'm Ian Wilson, and I create graphic art using primarily traditional methods, supplementing with digital where it's needed. I use a real pen, a real paper, a real graphite to make my art. I like to feel my art. I've always been this way. I love the feeling of a pen or pencil in my hand, the sound of graphite scratching paper, and I love the sight of a nice black line making its way across the page. So why choose traditional art over digital? Traditional art has an organic, natural quality that seems to be missing from most digital illustrations. The illustrated books and comics that were made in the days before digital have an excellence and staying power that is just as vibrant now as it was decades ago. These are the stories that stay with you. Dr. Seuss, Winnie the Pooh, Where the Wild Things Are. People still read these. I'm currently working on my own graphic novel series, Legend of the Swordbearer, and I've also had the privilege to draw graphics for 2 motion comic series, along with illustrations for a small magazine, Logosophia magazine, and various book covers. Don't let traditional art fade into the dust. Help me keep it alive. You won't regret it. Visit my website at ianthomaswilson.com for more info.
And now back to the trenches with Jason Farley on Poets at War.
I think that the most important video on YouTube right now is a video called Bo Burnham versus Jeff Bezos. I brought it up on Poets at War before. But it is about transhumanism, social media, and the effect of both of those influences on the human soul by effectively an atheist. Very interesting video. But he has one line in there where he says, at some point there were famous people and normal people. And then the floor fell out with the invention of social media. And now it's a continuum that starts on one end with Kim Kardashian, and there's a ladder that everybody is on. And that's where it is. So everybody is on that ladder now. And it starts with you and ends with Kim Kardashian. Do you think that that is good? Because you said that the democratization is good, and I tend to agree with that. But do you think that having everybody on the ladder of fame, like, it seems like a new version of the chain of being?
It's probably it would be some sort of existentially in the experience of it, in some sort of chain of chain of human of who's but it's importance, so it's economic chain of being rather than necessarily an ontological chain of being or something. But I don't think that is actually a different thing. We just have the ability to move up and down it has changed. So it's always been there's always been kind of an economic chain from the top to the bottom. But what is valued shifts and changes. What can be monetized has shifted and changed. But I think it's the same thing. I remember I had that moment of realization. It was when my kids were heading off to college and thinking through these things, when you realize the ability to get, and it was what happened was MIT were the first college to record their entire degree and put it up available for free. So anybody could go get the MIT education. But they knew people would still pay for it because you can't get the MIT connections. Right? So you go to college not just to get you go to an Ivy League school, for example, not just to get the education, because you can actually get the education at your local
Let's see what he's
Yeah,
got behind
exactly.
him.
You can get the education at your local library for $2.50 in late fees. What you can't get is the connections. So I'm a student of comedy. I don't even know how to put it. I read a lot on comedy and the business side of comedy, but also the history of comedy. And there will be places that put out a series of comedians. And I know, because I work in the industry, I know that it's not because they were all the best comedians, but because they were friends. They all worked together on the Harvard Lampoon, and so one of them gets a job, and they're like, "Hey, we need a couple more writers," and he says, "Oh, let me call my old roommates from college." Right, the connections got them the job, and a lot of them were great comedy writers too. Right, you don't get the job without also being a great comedy writer, but you don't get the opportunity, or you used to not be able to get the opportunity if you were living in the middle of Ohio in a small town. It didn't matter if you're the funniest person in your small town, you didn't have any connections, right? Which is why comedians used to drive to LA and they would sleep in their cars on Sunset Strip to be able to meet the people that had the connections, right? To be able to make the connections. But those stories have gone away because, and I mean, I'm sure there's some of them still going on, and you'll hear about them eventually. But now you don't need the gatekeepers anymore. Right now, with a little bit of knowledge and a consistently good content, you can lift yourself into the industry, into the entertainment industry, because the entertainment industry, the monetizable aspects of the entertainment industry have been democratized. So that's what I mean by I think it's a positive influence, because I don't think I don't think that it's generally good for I grew up with a distinct experience of the difference between my private person and my public person. You put on a persona, you go to high school, you act a certain way. That distinction has gone away, and it's going to lead to a lot of existential issues for people as they experience their own life, and but I think it's just an opportunity for the gospel. Every crack that leaks in too, right? So if the cracks in the psyche that open up because of that become places to pour the gospel through. So and that's how I got saved. So
yeah, another thing that I think is positive for artists in particular, particularly ones with offbeat personalities, is the fact that
Joshua, I wonder why you're bringing this up.
Well, I'd say that honestly, because the internet has opened up so many people to so many different kinds of people, it's way less strange for someone to come across me and go, oh, does he fit into one of the 80s high school boxes? Right? Like they go, okay, what is this? Taking it as it is. Where are we going? Roller coaster. And they start to get a feel. This is good for artists making friends on a personal level, but it's also good on a professional level because it allows people to craft their personal personalities more towards an intentional what I want to be professionally. I think that bringing your personal and professional life together, while there is a privacy aspect that everyone's obsessed with worrying about, the other half of that is we're not living near as much a double life as we did previously. There's a lot more what you see is what you get. And you're able to craft yourself on a singular level instead of dividing your mental bandwidth to developing two different or even more personalities, So I think that's helpful, especially to artists who are trying to present themselves as valuable to other people in order to make money, whether directly or indirectly. So.
Well, and the those modernist divisions really were a fracturing of the psyche, or fracturing of the selfhood, or the experience of selfhood, that hasn't been good. It's been very destructive. So, um, you know, the in you know, so it'll be interesting to see um how things go. But I mean, I still think like the most powerful things are still like dinner with your family. You know, obviously worship and the word and sacrament, are at the heart of it. And so, but I know I have to work really hard to not just look judgmentally down at the next generation, or the next, the newest generation, that just have no sense of privacy. They're like, hey, here I am doing this thing, and I'm like, do you have followers? Do you not? You're like, what are we doing?
Right.
Like, but the mediation of selfhood through a screen isn't is just that's the norm. Everybody's doing that. I didn't grow up that way, so but I don't want to look at them and say, in my day, we didn't have that, because in my day, we had incredibly shattered selfhoods with existential problems all over. Like, I'm Gen X. Yeah. We were the worst. We brought cynicism to everything, and we did a lot of the melting down. I mean, it was my generation that set fire to a lot of the foundations that they have to live without, right? And so I don't want to. I don't want to act like things were good back when I was there, because we were burning down things that now they're like, I've never experienced true community. Like, yep, that was my fault. That was my generation did that. Sorry.
Well, that was
that Gen X, or was that the Boomers?
It was
post-war.
I'd say both, probably, right? I know everyone goes boomers, but I think it's the war of the two.
I think it was the fight between the Boomers and the Gen X that did it.
Okay, yeah. I can see that.
Brendan, you've had a lot of thoughts going through your face. I can see them clearly.
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
Well, one, how did we get to hear from AI? But aside from that,
well, we can come back and circle back around. But I want to talk more on this. This is good stuff. This is artist important stuff.
No, but I kind of want to push back a little bit, because I'm not sure it was necessary. Yes, our worldview, or the modernist worldview, is fractured. Yes, cynicism, yes, nihilism, yes, all of that stuff caused a whole lot of issues. I'm not sure if the example of I have to put on a face while being in high school and then I go home and I can finally be myself, I'm not sure that is an example of a shattered psyche, because, and the reason why is because when you're in a society, you have to abide by certain rules. And there are elements to yourself that need to be tempered when you are out in public. And I think that one of the, I would argue, flaws of the shattering of this, our private is our public life, is twofold. One, now we don't have a fail-safe against us actually trying to make ourselves into our own image, or trying to make God into our image, i.e. transgenderism. And two, when you had that sort of societal expectation sort of there, that acted almost like a bulwark to prevent you from going down those roads in the first place, because you could only do that in your spare time at home alone in your, in the safety of your house. But because you're not practicing it for 8 hours a day, it makes it really hard to practice it in the 4 hours you are at home, or however many. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense, but I like, overall, I like agree with the sentiments that you're saying. I wonder if because I wonder if that's really, I wasn't there, so I don't know if Gen X actually burned stuff to the ground. But I'm sitting here looking at like both my generation and the next generation, and I'm going, their psyche is just as shattered, if not more shattered.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right?
And that's why I threw my pen.
Well, in terms of burning to the ground, maybe we didn't, but that's how we talked about what we were doing, right? So you've got the that view of things is, let's burn it all down, let's burn it to the ground. That just the kind of the punk rock mentality. Mm-hmm. So, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. We aren't the ones that actually did it, but I think we wanted to have been the ones that did it minimally.
You at least encouraged it.
Yeah. But I think you're right that the societal expectations are a good thing, right? That we wouldn't want to live without those. I think
insofar as they come from a good place, i.e., Christendom.
Right. Yeah. Because I guess if it's like, if you're living in communist Russia and the societal expectations are you turn your neighbor in.
Victorian England, anybody?
To the Gestapo. Did the Victorian England have a Gestapo?
I know, but they did have a completely shun you from the entirety of the civilized world. You have to go with the drunkards and the workmen, caste system. And so my point being that like there's manners, which is really what we're talking about, manners and etiquette.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's caste systems. And there's a very thin line to where we start turning things into caste systems. And that's what I'm arguing against more so than manners. Of course we need manners. Of course we need to go against people who are specifically pushing the Overton window to where manners don't exist anymore. But it was really funny. I had this conversation with Knox at Lebanon Fight Laugh Feast and Toby as well, because I don't know if you remember, Jason, you were there. I wore a rainbow kilt, and I don't remember. Yeah, I have a kilt that has different plaid colors on it mixed in with brown, and it's a rainbow utility kilt. And I wore that with a dragon Hawaiian shirt and my top hat. And that's part of what I do to get noticed. Right. And so I'm going full on.
Does it work?
Ken Ham rainbow. Oh boy, does it work.
Yeah, yes, it works.
Nobody forgets me. Nobody forgets me. That's the thing. Right. And it is an opening conversation to, why do you wear a kilt? Are you Scottish? Yes, but also Presbyterian, go for it. What I'm talking about. Yeah. That aesthetic. Dragons, dragons are amazing. And, the haunted cosmos conversation surrounding dragons. And then you can go Hawaiian. Hawaii was one of the godliest nations on earth. Top hat. Why am I doing all of this? P.T. Barnum and advertising and doing something wild and unconventional in a way that gets attention, right? And so it all connects, but the point is that I'm not doing it to break etiquette. And if I ever do break etiquette, like they gave me for the Knoxville one, they gave dress code for Yonder Child because of me. But cool. I have no problem. Going back to whatever I'm doing. Right. And whatever you need me to do, I'm happy to be that man, be all things to all people, like the scripture says. Right. But it's just one of those things where there's etiquette and then there's a caste system as far as I see it. What do you think?
I mean, I know there are we've had societies that have a caste system that's sort of an official caste system. Mm-hmm. I think it's in one sense, the caste system is unavoidable. It's just whether or not the caste system is impenetrable. And I think that's when it's a problem. So, there are people are going to find themselves organized around whatever the principles are.
Right.
And the only place that it should be disallowed is in church.
Yes.
Right. In church, we're specifically commanded that it's a caste-free community. But I don't, I don't have a problem with neighborhoods and
Sure.
with that the big houses are on that side of town, the small houses are on that side of town. I don't think that we need to that those are necessarily problems so long as when everybody comes to worship, they understand they're worshiping on the only footing of Christ and Him crucified. That sort of thing. And I think that's what keeps the peace between caste systems, or within unofficial caste systems. When you have in pagan societies, when the caste systems are considered ontological caste systems, that causes all sorts of problems. I guess you should also not have a caste system in the courtroom. Before the law, everyone should be equal as well. And that is one of the problems in our society. The richer you are, the easier it is to get off right now.
Yeah.
So it's not the caste system necessarily that's a problem.
Right.
But there's definitely that when the caste system is,
When they don't allow
tribal,
movement
maybe.
between,
when
it
there's
becomes tribal.
when it's impenetrable, tribal, that sort of caste system causes all sorts of problems.
Like Footloose.
And it's everything from right. It's everything from like, if it's like, oh yeah, I can steal from that person because they're not one of us, right? That then you've got a caste system that's not the right kind, or that's the wrong kind.
Yeah. So coming back around to AI, let's talk generative AI. Not just generative. You could do modification AI for. There's both versions for voices specifically. This is one of those areas that a lot of people get very weird, especially people who have very high respect for words and the word, and might even have some of our leanings into the magic of words, that the universe was made with words. So what are your thoughts on that process, both the generative AI where you're actually creating something from a voice, text prompt, that sort of a thing, and necromancying, joking, a voice out of something, right? Or unless you think that, which go ahead. But or modification where you're doing a voice changer to sound like someone else, right? So,
well, I do think it's really interesting now that they've got the AI where you can put your text in and you get it read to you in a particular voice.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a recording of Snoop Dogg reading the Bible. That just cracks me up. Like, and so I think there's the possibilities for satire and things. I think are opened up by that, and I think we've got a pretty solid satire law. As long as the satire laws are being enforced in AI, I think that it'll be fine. I think that having like I have listened through the whole New Testament read by James Earl Jones.
That's awesome.
And by Johnny Cash.
Yes, Johnny Cash is amazing.
But those are real recordings, and there's something I think powerful about listening to a guy like Johnny Cash read the Bible. That is really fun. I do I do wonder, like, are we gonna not trust? Are we gonna lose more and more trust as some of this AI goes, and we don't know how to deal with it? We don't have AI deepfake ability to catch it and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But like, I've got a really cool set of CDs. This is how old I am.
I love CDs.
A really cool set of CDs of the earliest recordings of poetry that they have, right? And so you've got T.S. Eliot reading his own poetry, William Butler Yeats reading his own poetry, right? That was really scratchy early recordings, all the way back to I think the very first poem that was ever recorded on on the well, here I've got some right here.
If I remember correctly, the first recording on the original phonograph was Mary Had a Little Lamb, which is technically a poem.
Oh, technically a poem. That's true. We got these Edison records.
Yes.
Right. So, it was the guy that was the poet laureate in England at the time, and it was the Charge of the Light Brigade.
Oh yeah.
Which is escaping my. It'll come to me in the middle of the night.
I think you talked about him on the last Knox Unplugged.
Okay, yeah. So you've got and then like Robert Frost reading his poetry and listening to the recordings of that it's pretty amazing. Like I think that it's so if you could figure out how to use AI to recreate that sort of thing, I think that there's value in that, educational value, and to be able to take some of those recordings and use AI to take the scratches out to get, here's what it would have sounded like in person. I think there's really real value to some of that as a poet. At the same time, I wouldn't necessarily want to put my poetry out all read by Snoop Dogg or Dr. Dre. If they wanted to read my poetry, I think I would totally be okay with them doing that. But I don't know if I would want to use AI. Maybe that's just the purity of the artist.
So the
issue.
The letter that Tolkien wrote, where he was talking about Frodo's nobility and like the fact that he did fail, but there was still honor in that, that he carried it to the breaking point. I actually heard someone put that in J.R.R. Tolkien's voice on TikTok.
See that,
and I listened to it.
That sounds amazing.
It was, and then my other half was, oh dear, he would be rolling in his grave if that was a thing.
He's creating his own source of energy. We should just be plugging wires into his grave.
Right.
Yeah. Between that and Rings of Power, that's how we solve
the energy crisis.
Free energy. Yeah.
I love how crabby Tolkien was.
Yes.
I love it. It just makes me happy. It's his letters, but he's also he can be incredibly gracious too as well, which I think is I don't think we don't have that sort of category where it's like the grumpy uncle. That's also
Ian Wilson. In our group.
You're not wrong.
He's our grumpy uncle.
But if you were going to show up drunk at somebody's door at 1 a.m. needing a place to stay, Tolkien would be the one that pulled you inside, right? He'd be he's simultaneously both those guys.
Let me just point out one other thing about that with Tolkien. As soon as I heard that, I said, there's a chance I can hear him read the Tower of Curathungel. Like, oh my word, right? Like Sam in the Tower of Curathungel. And then the other thing that immediately flashed to my mind is I don't have recordings of my dad reading me Narnia. I don't have anything like that, but I might be able to recreate it from some of his recordings when I start, finish learning how. And the fact that I might be able to hear my dad read me Narnia again when he's passed away just, absolutely blows my mind. And the fact that I can give that possibly to my children too, my voice first, and then their grandfathers, and when whatever else, that absolutely blows my mind. So there's good and amazing possibilities. Now, here's the thing that I think a lot of people are going to say: you're focusing on all the positive. What about all the negative? And you mentioned some negative things, and what do you think are? I think it sounds like the main thing you're worried about is people trying to lie with AI. Like that's the biggest hurdle.
Yeah, I think that is something that I think we're going to have to figure out. I also think just one of the central purposes of art is to connect people to people, right? You connect, sort of, for my humanity resonates across the medium of whatever the art is to it resonates with your humanity, and there's a real fellowship that can happen across space, across time, but also happen in proximity to art as it's being created in the performing arts, and that I think that I do worry will be undercut by people's experience. Similar to, like, if if I can walk through Target and get a Monet, or a print of a Monet, and I sort of have the illusion that I have experienced Monet, and so I maybe decide, well, I don't need to go to a museum when Monet comes through. I've seen a Monet. I've got I've got a poster of one in my room. Um, I do worry that our humanity will suffer when at the devaluation,
Devaluation.
Devaluation.
the devaluation. Thank you. The devaluation of original art, maybe. My wife and I have spent years trying to build up an art collection enough that we can have only original art in the house. And that's something that we just set our mind to early on and said we value the connection and the production of art, and so we're going to pay for it. We're going to pay to have you. I mean, we can get a Monet and put it on the wall at Target, or but it's not the same as being able to say this art is the original. Here's where we got it. Here's the artist. We try to meet the artist that we buy art from as often as we can. So it took 20 some years to get to that point. But it's a conviction that the value that art is valuable, and we're going to put money towards it. So I worry that is going to be lost. But I know that has happened over and over. When they started recording music, you see people writing about the concern that live music is not going to be valued as much, and it still is. I'm taking my 18-year-old son and his friend to their first concert over in Seattle. Go see Worry Club, go watch a live band, and we go see live music all the time, and so and I can get recordings of the best music in the world, but I'd rather see live music than the best music in the world recorded. So that, I mean, those are all super artsy concerns.
Yeah, but that's
less philosophical.
That's what we're kind of discussing here, though. I mean, it's Poets at War. We're talking about the effects of it on the artist. I'm not an artist. I'm artist adjacent. But do you think that there's a difference between, like you mentioned, CDs or even phonographs or digital recording as a change in the distribution mechanism, as opposed to what generative AI is, which is a change in the production mechanism? Do you think that there is a substantial difference between those two things?
I think there is, but I don't know. People are so fundamentally made in the image of a creative God that we will take anything and create with it. I mean, I love just the art of spinning records, DJing, scratching records, right? You literally didn't create anything except for you did, right? You took other people's stuff and you mixed it and you scratch it, and a new art arises out of other people's art and the combination of art. So I think but generative AI is a different sort of thing. But I'm looking forward to seeing how people use it, because I don't think it's going to be as straightforward as, like, when I use it, it's like, hey, show me a puppy riding on the back of a bear that's snowboarding, and they just make the thing, and then I say, oh, I like that one. I don't have but there is a real art to how to use the tool.
Oh yes.
That I think people are going to get good at. and use in the same sort of way that you've got, kind of a. I mean, I remember when like house music really started to take over, and cracking jokes about it's just music made by robots for robots. But seeing what people have done with that, with the tools to make music, compared to when they first started to be used, now I don't think of it that way at all. I've changed my tune and think like, no, actually, you can, seeing the things that people have done with those tools, just because when they first came out, it all just sounded like music for robots by robots.
Yeah.
The humans have a way of taking the tools God gives them and being artistic that always blows my mind.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things about people, is how peopleish they are.
That's one of the things that with. So, you want to go ahead, Alex, or you want me to bring up the way I do a little bit of my stuff?
I'll go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'll
hold it.
So you're seeing it as you're saying, yes, it is a different thing, but just because it's a different thing doesn't mean the same principles don't apply. That humans will actually create actual art that connects on an actual level with the humanity of people with the AI, because it's not the AI doing it, it's the person doing it. It's the prompter. It's actually getting that done.
Yeah, it's the prompter, and then
the same.
Yeah, and then the eye, the artistic eye, to be able to pick out which one is better, and then the adjustments that are made and all of that. I do think that, but I think we're so early on that it does still all feel like robots, and there'll be people that get really good at it, but the illusion is always going to be, well, I could have done it because the AI did it. And that's when we get beyond that level, then we're starting to talk about art, and I don't think we are. And it's one of those things where it's like, I might be wrong about this one. This one's just a guess. But I think of it very similar to, a drum machine, right? You used to be able to nail from 30 miles away. Oh, those are drums in a box is what we used to call them, right? Except a drummer, right?
So I
feel
it drums coming in the air tonight. Anyway,
right? Yeah, he's boop, 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 boop. Yep. Right. But you think like this is drums in a box, electric drums, and then just the drum machine. It was rare that you got something great. I mean, you had the Gorillas, Clint Eastwood was straight out of a box. But other than that, there was really nothing that you'd say like that was great, even though it just was drums in a box. Most of the time, you looked down on it because you could tell. Now, a number of times I've thought, is that drums in a box or not? I can't tell anymore because the people that are using the tool have gotten so good at it. And I think that's the thing that makes it art, is the people's use of the tool. So I think of it similar to a drum machine.
And yeah, absolutely. And the important part being in the usage is exactly what Joshua is going to be bringing up here.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I've had to convince people of, and when I create and share basically a animated slideshow story, is that I didn't just prompt X number things and then pick the best one and then throw it in the editor and put it all together. I actually, most of my art, and I'm getting better as I do this, but the thing that I'm pioneering into is a technique that's essentially you get anywhere from like 3 to 15 really good ones that are about what you're trying to get at, even with all the imperfections. You throw them in an editor, and what you do is you start erasing that, and you start putting the different backgrounds together, the different layers together, and also coming in with a brush and blurring a little bit here, doing a little bit here, as far as Procreate is what I use mostly for that. And so it's not just one thing And then also, even before that, I'm using a lot of image to image generation, where I'm essentially, what I'm doing is I'm photoshopping, essentially, like you would think Photoshop, right? Find someone who looks vaguely like the character that I want to use, right? And then, okay, they need armor. Okay, they need, to have their arm moved to this pose. Okay, they need, you see what I'm saying? And I get it in a really crappy, terrible photoshopped way. And then I let the art filters and things do their thing and get about 15 of those. And then, do like, it's work. It's real work to get a good result. But it's using a computer to give you options, to give you lines that you didn't know, because I'm not a line artist. I can paint kind of. If I really try hard, but I know color and I know cinematography, and I know what I want to see, but I can't quite I can't do the line work. I've never been able to crack line work. And so this is like revolutionary for someone like me, to where all of my artistic eye from a camera perspective and from a color perspective can actually be used now, right? And I don't think people are realizing what that can do for someone who has 3/4 of the skills that they need to do something, but they would never be able to do any of it professionally without, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that's the it's still a matter, art is still a matter of being transformed into the person that can create it, right? So you can't just say, make me a beautiful painting to AI. You have to actually be able to recognize a beautiful painting, because if you can't, then it doesn't even matter. If it gives you 4 options, you just say, okay, I'll take that one, I'll take that one, I'll take that one. You've actually got to be able to say, oh, that one's well composed and that one's not. And it's make sure that it doesn't have 6 fingers, and so it's not actually accidentally a Nephilim that you made.
Inigo Montoya isn't going to come in and be upset. Like, so I was gonna say, Brendan, do you have something? Because you've been quiet for a little while. I wanted to see.
Yeah, Brendan hasn't said in a while.
I don't have any. Well, I have a thought, but it's not specifically about AI exactly.
That's okay. You can go in a different direction. Jason, just so I was thinking, based on our previous ones, I was thinking 2-ish hours roughly. But if you need to go before that, totally fine. I'm not trying to keep you after that though, because I want to respect your time.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
So I'll try to make this quick. You mentioned Ian Wilson, so
no, that means 45 minutes, Brendan.
he and I agree on one thing, although I'm not sure I can exactly articulate it amazingly, but I'll do my best.
But before you do your best, Brendan, let us get to our sponsors once again, then back to the trenches on Poets at War. This is a public service announcement for listeners and followers of Poets at War. Confess your sins and follow on Christ. Do not wait. The enemy takes every opportunity to turn you toward his side and destruction. Always remember, when it comes to your own heart and soul,
clean is good.
Hello, I'm Sarah Levesque, Editor-in-Chief of Logo Sophia magazine. I would like to invite you to explore our Pilgrim's Journal of Life, Love, and Literature, both in visual format and in podcast format. Our goal is to help bridge the gaps between different Christian denominations and traditions. Please visit our website at logosophiamag.com to read or listen to stories, articles, poetry, and more, all for free. We look forward to journeying with you.
We now return you to our war meeting in the trenches on Poets at War.
God made the world. I have a whole soapbox about nature spirits. Not getting into that. But one of the things that, when I do my drawings, my general preference is to draw on paper and pencil, right? And then if I am going to digitally do it, I take a picture and then I do the digital line art of the scan over top of the basic drawing, because that's more comfortable for me. At one point, I was thinking about this, and I'm wondering, is a digital piece of art less real than a piece of art drawn on physical paper? And I haven't come to a conclusion, really. I'm open to whatever, because part of me is like, no, it's the drawing, it's the visuals, it's that sort of thing that is being received by the eyes. It doesn't matter if it's on a piece of paper or on a computer screen. It still has, that is the thing. But there's some part of me that sort of has this sort of, I don't want to call it mysticism because that's going to raise all kinds of alarm bells, but that sort of thing where it's like, oh, if we, taking the actual real world pieces, putting them together, combining them with your hands and stuff and doing like that rather than just electrons jumping around inside a computer's chips, which was also made with hands.
Which is also physical matter.
Which is also physical matter, but digital matter is not physical matter.
Yes, it is. Zeros and ones on a hard drive are physical matter.
They are conceptual. They are conceptual.
They are representative, but the zeros and ones are physical matter on a hard drive.
They're not. It is energy. Matter and energy are two different things.
It is like carving with a pin on a grain of rice. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway. Where I was going with the AI thing is that I sort of see a parallel between where the digital being energy, yes, it's on a computer chip, but it's still energy, and you can erase it at any time. You can't erase other stuff too, obviously, but you EMP it and it goes away. That sort of connection between the physical versus the digital, that thing. I see the same thing where this is human element and this is AI element, right? But we were just talking about how, it's AI is a tool. You have to use it. So I guess I don't know what I'm asking, because I want, as somebody who's trying to who's teaching himself 3D animation, I want stuff that's made on computers to be real and to be effective, and it is effective. And I don't think we should only be using printing presses to print our books, because it's horribly inefficient and would take way too long, So I'm all for like physical things being made through digital mediums and all that stuff, and that's all great. I guess you've already kind of answered the question where AI is not really removing the human element. Because you still need a human to operate the AI right now. This isn't like the artist version of Skynet that's happening. So I don't know. I just
I think that some of it comes down to the mediation of our experiences through our senses, and its relationship to the imagination. Because because I know, like, for example, I didn't even have email when I went to college, right? So it's so if I read something on a screen, I don't remember it as well as if I read something physical. Whereas the younger generation, they don't have that same. Their mind interacts with screens as in the same way that it interacts with a page. In terms of reading
some
and
of them do, Alex. It just depends. I've heard people with both experiences. Yeah. So
I have as well. I'd say that's around 50-50 though.
Yeah.
It's not a generation thing. It's a brain thing.
Oh, it's a brain thing.
Work that way.
I'm of the opinion it's a changing brain thing over generations, and we just haven't fully changed yet. But go ahead.
I think that probably that might be the case, but I think Jonathan Edwards has some interesting essays about the mediation. That there's nothing that comes to us unmediated as humans. So one of the limitations that we have is that all things come to us in a mediated way. And so he says even the word of God comes to us through vibrations that hit our ear. And they were discovering sound waves in his lifetime. So I think he was wrestling through, wait, what do sound waves tell us about being human? The existence of sound waves. And so but that it acts upon but the way I think about it is it all still acts upon our imagination, and so our experience of art is an imaginative entering in, and so you can do that in 3D animation as well as a painted picture. And it's the same with when somebody tells you a story versus reading a story. It's a different experience of it, but both of them act upon the imagination in a similar way. But the medium does affect the communication of the message. And so I think there's better and worse ways to use different mediums, and probably better and worse stories to tell in different mediums. The stories that fit certain mediums better than others. Although anime, I think, probably shows us that really any kind of story can be told well in a particular medium. We just have to know how to use the medium well. And so like if somebody doesn't like anime, I just simply don't trust them ever again.
It's like I was like,
That's
I
a
don't
great
like anime.
line.
It's like, I don't like anime. I'm like, you do realize that, and you just said I don't like books, right?
Right? Yeah,
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the broadest of all storytelling. I mean, right now you can get any kind of story. My son is watching a volleyball anime right now, which amazes me. But he loves it. He's like, well, the story's great. I love the characters, and it's about a college or a high school volleyball team. I was like, it's anime, and that's what but so I think anime is probably proving the limitations of the Western imagination a little bit. And the Asian imagination doesn't have some of the limitations. Which is a good thing. I'm excited about that. But
what would you say, Brendan?
I just said part of that is legal. There are laws around Western animation that were like the cow was walking, and then they had to put the cow in a dress because the cow was naked. And animation is for kids, so we need to make sure that the cow is, but those laws just reinforced that animation in the West is for kids. Whereas
it's for kids,
Whereas in the East they don't have that limitation.
Right. Well, that's a good. I didn't even know about that. That's amazing. But it totally makes sense. Like animation is for, and some of that is our first most brilliant animators loved kids stories. So I think there's that as well.
But then you got Betty Boop, but whatever. And Max Fleischer.
Outliers.
Yes, outliers. Anyway,
speaking of, well, let me just say, I've wondered your opinion on this for a little bit if you've seen it. Speaking of animation, Western, Eastern influences, and Max Fleischer related, have you seen and do you like? Because I know you love Dante, and it's basically Dante Over the Garden Wall. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I didn't even make the Dante connection my first time through it. The second time through it was when the Dante connection, and I think somebody had mentioned it to me before I watched it my second time, and then you're like, oh yeah, the Dante connection is definitely
right there.
And whether it's there because Dante is so deeply embedded in the Western imagination. Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if he had ever confirmed it, but yeah, because it's definitely there.
Well, that's why he sings in the very end when Greg is singing in Latin. That's actually a little bit of a nod to Dante and everything, even though it's Italian. But yeah, you get the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Italian's just dirty Latin.
Yes.
I mean, it's just.
It's true. It's very true.
It's low rent Latin. That's
low rent Latin. That's amazing.
Anyway, you're saying, Jason.
What was I saying? Oh, so I think that it's that interaction between the senses and the imagination that I find really interesting, but I especially because books like things like Ecclesiastes that teach us to revel in our limitations, to embrace the limitations and say thank you for them. I'm so grateful that you gave me these limitations because that makes these pleasures possible. I think that is where we need. I think that's where we need to lean in right now, in storytelling, especially. I mean, as fellow Tolkien guys, I always read Ecclesiastes in Tom Bombadil's voice in my head, and I think that solves every exegetical problem.
A feast is made for laughter, and wine makes the heart merry, but money is the answer for everything.
Hey,
Ecclesiastes
merry
10:19.
I know. So as soon as you read that all as soon as you put it together into Tom Bombadil's voice, all of the difficult passages go away, because that's my
generative AI for voices.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
There you go.
yes, that's what we need, is to get the Tolkien, because we've got recordings of Tolkien reciting the Tom Bombadil poetry.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
get him
fair
to.
Yep,
And
there you go.
that Tolkien translated the Book of Job for the current Catholic English Bible.
Oh yeah.
No.
I believe it.
Yeah,
Really?
so there's a Tolkien's translation of Job out there. I've got it, on my shelf, and it's
That could be
Don't
exhilarating.
mind me. I'm definitely not putting that in Amazon right now.
No, you are.
I'm just saying, like, they should totally have. I was just saying, like, thinking of the way he reads the Ride of the Rohirrim, which is one of his most famous recordings, like how fast he's doing it, that might actually make Job better, because they keep dragging on all the time. If they did it at his cadence and his pace, that might actually make it better.
I'd love to make a movie of Job, so that you can keep track of which characters are making which arguments and that sort of thing. But the expensive part is once God shows up.
Yeah.
I don't know how you.
My wife's here,
I know
just
how I
saying
would
hi.
do that. Hi.
Hi, Casey.
Say hi real quick.
How's it going?
Good. How are you
Pretty
doing?
good.
Good.
She was
So-
at Ladies Bible Study.
Yes, I was.
Welcome back.
And then I tried to go to Taco Bell, and they gave me the wrong food, so now I have 2 meals. So, happy
Yay.
birthday.
Perfect.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. I'll eat it later. Anyway, thank you. Appreciate
Generative AI, generative food.
it.
Yeah.
There you go. I was gonna say Tom Bombadil related AI. I've recently been posting in the Brood, which is, if you didn't gather, our sort of little artist group. I was been posting occasionally some very short prose where Tom Bombadil confronts Cthulhu. And it's just totally enjoyable. Just as a little asides here or there. And it's like, just the fact that I can just say, give me a thing where Tom Bombadil defeats Cthulhu with song. It's like,
That's incredible. We have a short that we haven't released yet on Lore that is called
you can get in trouble for this?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
It's all right. It's called LaShawn.
Mhm.
It's so the show is called Fridge Magnet, and so it's short experimental.
I've heard about
animated.
this. Yes.
Yeah. So, we've got a bunch of different ones. We've got Trad, Chad, and Wifey, about a husband and wife that save marriages in their neighborhood with the superpower of traditional gender roles. And then oh man, what else have we got? We've got the Special Eddie and the Social Justice League. It's just various intersections uniting into but the pilot episode, we've got a hyper violent Samson and the jawbone of the ass.
Yes.
The opening, the pilot is called LaShawn, and it's a black aborted fetus gets magical powers, or survives his abortion at Planned Parenthood, and gets magical powers of song to fight transvestites and feminists.
Yes.
It's so
Hey.
it's a way of saying, hey, no matter what you want to do, it's not as bad as this.
Yes, exactly.
So there's nobody that is doing anything that they can't say, well, at least it's not that, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, some of our other ones, we've got Puberty the Musical. A show, and one called Normcore. That's the most normal man in town, named Norm, is treated like a revolutionary by all his crazy neighbors.
That's fun.
Oh, I love that.
The Wear Chinchillas. The moon is full. Watch your ankles. So we've got. So it's just like funny, just experimental stuff where you're trying to give an opportunity for artists to kind of show their stuff, to build an audience, and then looking for our Rick and Morty, our Family Guy, our animated stuff that says like, oh, we can push the edges back here, push the edges back over there. But you got to do that by experimenting, and because you might have an idea that seems amazing, you try it out and it doesn't work.
Right.
And if trying it out for an hour and a half is a much more expensive than trying it out for a 3.5 minute short. So
Right.
and Zoolander started out as a short, so anything can make it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Alex, you got some stuff or?
I can't find Tolkien's translation of Job. I can find his translation of Jonah, but not
cool.
Job.
Jonah would be good.
Ooh, I thought it was, maybe it is Jonah. I thought it was Job.
It was a J-O.
Yeah.
Could have been Josh.
Jonah.
Could have been Joel.
What's funny though is if it's not Job, I got the Catholic Bible and read the translation of Job and not the translation of Jonah. So
there you go. Oh, that's funny.
Was it any different?
I mean, it was just a nice new English translation. It didn't particularly stand out, so maybe that's why I need Jonah in.
So
maybe that's the one that has the magic in it.
What would be your advice to people who, especially Christians, especially Christian artists, who are either concerned about toying with or are actively toying with AI, and whether they're questions surrounding should I be careful just in case, should I not present it before certain people, what are some etiquette type things that you could think of with AI, and maybe even some safety factors or whatever else, but also how should you push the envelope, like what are your thoughts right now? Obviously that might change in the future, we're pioneering, but
right, totally. And I mean I wouldn't ever present it as if it was my own art. I would always present, always just be completely honest. Like, oh, I used AI to create this. I used Mid-Journey, whatever it is, and without being ashamed of it. And then, I mean, and maybe this is something that I just need to grow up in, but I don't worry about etiquette. Like, don't offend those people or and then I try to make sure I control my own, myself when other people present things and not be too easily offended. But I think that if your goal is to serve your neighbor, then the presentation of your art has to be a part of that, right? And that's why you should make art, is always to serve your neighbor. I mean, if you're just journaling and working through things within yourself and you have to do that, then don't act like it's art and don't present it to your neighbor, and that stuff you keep for yourself. And I've got things that I've written for myself because as I work through something. But if you're making art, it should be something you're doing for your neighbor and not for yourself. And so the presentation and the that's a big part of that. So and it's always terrifying to present anything that you did, because if it's art that's of any value, you're opening up your soul and saying, how would you like to connect to my soul? And that's the goal of it, is for them to find somebody and say, was it Lewis says that a friendship is born in the moment when you meet somebody and say, you too, that connective power of art, which I think sometimes people call it sacramental. I don't think that's the right verb, but I don't have a better verb.
Right.
Because I think sacramental has to do with covenantal communication of covenantal relationships and realities, but it's something that's similar to the way God communicates to us in the sacraments. But I don't have a good verb yet.
I do.
You do?
It's Christmassy.
I like it.
That's actually a
that's an adjective.
Well, yes, but still, you can use it. Christmasing. You can use that.
I'm Christmasing this art to you.
Alex and I had some big discussions not too long ago that have turned into discussions about starting a distribution company for media in general, not just films or whatever, but like specifically starting and going into essentially just media production. Basically, the two main focuses of that business, which is yet to be named, are to baptize the imagination of the customers, and to secondarily, but also still very primary, be a friend, and I mean a friend in the fullest biblical sense of the word, friend that sticks closer to a brother to the artists. Those are the two main things, and that's the main focus of what we want to do. The conversations that have kind of led to that was an unpacking that I was kind of doing for him, and we were having our own sort of Knox and Jason moment, I think, of what the incarnation,
very much so.
What the incarnation means for economic reality, particularly in why Christmas means that we live in a no-sum universe. Why the incarnation means
a non-zero sum universe.
Right. Because of the way God broke the mold with gifting an infinite gift to the human race, we can then actually begin to give infinitely. And there are ways in which we are limited still by our sin, by things that we legitimately cannot give up for very specific reasons, but we cannot outgive God.
Right.
Post Christ, post the incarnation, we can't outgive God. And so I see the wheels turning.
Yeah. Well, so I wonder if
we called that Christmasism, which is why I was saying
Christmasism.
Right, which is why we were saying Christmas. I brought up Christmasing as a verb. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking of maybe carnating. Right, you're not incarnating in the giving of in the giving of art. You're not, but you are carnating. You're putting flesh to your ideas, or flesh to a feeling or something, and then handing it off, which I guess we also do when we like make somebody a pie for their birthday.
That's right.
We're carnating, but
it's especially if it's a carnitas pie
project.
Yeah, if it's that's what I was gonna say. If it's a meat, problem is if it's not art made of meat, maybe it's
Caro means flesh. So
yeah,
incarnate is in flesh,
right?
Literally.
Yep.
So you're fleshing out. You're wrapping flesh around your ideas or something.
Yeah. That actually works really well, because you're taking an idea that you have. Ideas are cheap, and then actually doing the thing and giving it to somebody else. So you're turning your idea, your concept, into a physical thing that you're giving somebody, and then the gift giving is the Christmasism idea, the idea that you're not asking for something in return. The subtitle that I'm workshopping right now for the book is gift giving as economic system.
Okay.
Yep.
So
meanwile,
there is
is disagreeing with them, but that's fine.
He's the
disagreeing.
cynic. Yeah, he's the cynic. So there you go.
I'm the cynic. But,
there's a Peter Lightheart essay on gifts and economics. over
Okay.
at wherever his, I can't remember the name of his,
Theopolis.
Theopolis, yeah. So I would hunt around, and he's written some stuff on gift giving and economics and the relationship between the two. You don't like
right now.
you don't like carnating of ideas in as art as I'm just trying to find a verb.
It's too
I
carnal.
love it.
Art.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I think he was talking to me. I like the concept. I just don't see how it can reasonably work when people need to eat.
Oh, the concepts that so
Well, the other thing that I'm kind of, Joshua and I differ in on one major thing when it comes to us creating our art. Joshua is get as much out as fast as possible and get it good enough so that not
Get to
make
where
it
you're not
badly,
sacrificing
but
on quality for like you get good at doing quality fast. is the way I
get
look
good
at
at doing
it.
quality fast.
The McDonald's
turn out
method,
content.
the old
Turn
McDonald's
out
method.
content quickly. It's a key turn. He could literally hand his process to someone else and they could keep going. That's his whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very problematic perfectionist streak. And I know it's a problem, but part of me also really wants to make the highest quality. I like to tell people, like, I'm an aspiring visual storyteller. My goal is to make you cry. Because I want you to feel such an intense emotional reaction from connecting with my story that you can't help but cry. That is my goal.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, what that means is, well, combining with the perfectionist, it means that I like barely ever finish anything. And when I do finish something, I look back at it like the next day and go, why? That's wrong. But it
Except
also
for the
means,
mushroom story.
well, the mushroom story was fun. But it also means though that I'm looking at this and that's going to take time. I take my time. I want to get it right. It needs to be right. And that just takes time. And so that's why I have no issue with the concepts that they put out in terms of like from a theoretical level. I'm like, yes, I like this. But practically, I will have major issues with this because in the meantime, while it's taking me a long time to make sure this thing is right, I still need to be working at another job to feed my family. I need to be doing all of this stuff. And so it's like, okay, this isn't something that you can just jump in to the deep end and just start swimming, right?
Yeah.
That's my whole shtick. But it's also, yeah. I don't know why I started talking about that.
No, I think this is good. I think this is good for people who are listening who are like you. So, Jason, what advice would you give Brendan?
I mean, one of my favorite poets is T.S. Eliot. And one of the things that I love about him is there are a couple of poems that he published and then edited again and republished in a different volume and then edited again and republished again because he was never happy with them. And then the question is, well, which is the real version? And you end up actually with just 3 versions of the same poem. And I've actually done that where a poem that I was dissatisfied with in my first volume ended up again in my 3rd volume with a new edit because and I can't remember who said it. It may have been Eliot, but you don't finish a poem. You just give up, right? You just say, okay, it's got to go. And so I think there's something noble about that, that there's the pursuit of perfection. And then you just have to figure out how to balance it with,
it has to ship.
getting enough content out to make money. I mean, T.S. Eliot at the end of his life has one volume, like all the poetry. There's bigger volumes with other stuff that he didn't publish, but all the published poetry is a tiny volume, and it's because of that perfectionistic attitude. But it's also one of the reasons that he is so influential, and is still read, is because he was so careful. And then you got guys like Gerard Manley Hopkins, who at the end of his life asked his best friend to burn his desk without looking in the drawers. And of course, the first thing his best friend did was look in the drawers, and he found these stacks of poems that he'd written. And so he took them out and published them. And so you've got some that are literally just never finished because he never was going to show anybody. And you think, had he understood that these were going to be such a gift to the world, he would have maybe edited them and completed them, but he was so turned in on himself and perfectionistic that he couldn't even show his poetry. But I mean, his poetry is, I think, some of the best written in English. So that's the ditch on the far side, is the stuff just never gets out. So
that was Tolkien and Lewis too.
It is, yeah. And early on, I realized as a screenwriter that if you couldn't produce fast enough, you couldn't be a pro. And I wanted to be a pro, and so you have to also learn to say, I'm just gonna produce. You get, and you know this as an editor, you get hired to do a job, you just do the job and you turn it in. You've been hired to write scripts, you just write the script, turn it in, do the edits, turn it back in, do the edits, turn it back in, then you're done. And there's different kinds of projects too. So,
yep. One of the things, there's room for those perfectionist projects. I definitely want to stress that. But the thing I was going to mention was with Christmasism concept that we have. I think the other thing that I wanted to get across is I work part-time for my church, part-time random editing jobs as well. That's part of how Brendan and I know each other, is through Yonder Child Media, Adrian Rink, those guys. And so like we I do freelance stuff, and I work for my church part-time, and we get by. And it's a thing where I'm at a point where I have enough part-time stuff that I can't go searching for full-time. And I've been worked into a corner by God to where if I'm not doing as much of my own work, I'm not on anyone's radar. And I've by trying to give people a gift, here's my YouTube shorts, just because that's what I have time to do. Here's my gift to you, right? As pitiful as it is, right? Continually giving gifts has put me in the position where people are giving gifts back to me and allowing me to do the thing that I need to do in order to make bigger and better gifts, because they see that, oh, this guy gives good gifts, we should put him in a place where he can give more good gifts, right? And so there's a gifting of the economy that's going on there that I was completely unaware of when I was working, and I'm not saying I wouldn't ever work, another full time. Of course I would, I'd work the most menial job I possibly could, because I don't want to be a bad father, you know what I mean? A bad husband. And so like, if I'm shoveling poop in a zoo, for 18 hours a day in the blazing hot Georgia sun, like fine, but as I have let go of things need to be perfect and focused on giving more gifts, I find that my gifts get better and I get put in a position to make better gifts. The letting go of those sorts of things has really helped me. And that might not be everyone's experience, because God has a different idea for everyone's life, and he's teaching different people different things. But I think that there is a principle to, if it's not karmic, it's not that simple, but one of the ways to act like Jesus is to give gifts, because he, that's the first thing we see him doing in the fact of the incarnation. right? I'm going to be with you. I'm condescending to be with you. That's the greatest gift that could ever be given. It's why we celebrate the greatest gift-giving holiday that has ever existed, right? And so, to me, in trying, and not even on a trying level, on a letting go level, and being like, okay, well, here's my terrible gift. I just grabbed the first thing I could think of, nail clippers, right? here's some nail clippers. God rewards that over time, and that's just been interesting and amazing to watch. And I think that it is a fabric of reality kind of thing that he's baked in, so.
But it's one that is you can't manipulate and control. Like it's
exactly,
it's beyond our ability to manipulate and control something like that. And that's, I think, one of the blessings of it.
Yes.
Is you have to trust the Lord.
Yeah.
And not your own ability, which is something that we all need more practice in.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to wrap the main portion of the podcast there. We have like 7 minutes if you're fine with it for anything else you guys wanted to get out. Everyone, be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War. Are they going to do the thing? They did the thing. Anyway. Oh, Jason did it. Yay.
Hey. For more conversations with artists in the trenches of this war of poets, visit joshuadavidling.com.
God of song, said warrior bard, though all the world betray thee, one sword at least thy right shall go.